Hello everyone, this is part 52 of What If Naruto Learned the Secret of Shadow Clone, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Karui anything. Sumui kept her voice down as they jumped through the thick forest trees. While they hadn't seen or sensed anyone since leaving B, it never hurt to be careful. They had a mission to complete after all. Dodging a low branch as she extended her senses, Karui shook her head as she and Omoi ran side by side, no chakra signatures nearby. We're still alone. Thankfully no Konoha nin were backing up the super powerful sage. That would have really put an end to their mission early. They continued to journey in silence, Karui and Omoi watching their squad leaders back while unknown to them she tried to formulate some plan to salvage this situation. Leaving B behind was an almost catastrophic setback. He was supposed to cause a disturbance while they hit their targets. Without him, their own goals became nearly impossible. Sumui frowned and nibbled on her thumbnail, unless. Motioning for the others to stop, she pauses on a thick branch and turns back to Karui and Omoi who stop within arm's reach of her. I have the beginnings of a plan, but it isn't a good one. Omoi shrugged, so long as we can complete our mission, it's good enough. Karui would have been happy to call it quits and leave that village alone. Voicing such was treason however, and not something she wanted to dabble in. What's up then, leader? Shifting her weight as she thought about things, Sumui crossed her arms around her middle, we're still going to wave and thus, Azushio. But without B and no sign of our scouts means we're going in blind, no info and no backup. Honestly sounded like suicide at this rate unless she could adjust their circumstances somehow. Trying to see where this was going as his leader paused, Omoi linked his hands behind his head, so we need info. Thinking of capturing a border patrol team and interrogating them would be the fastest way to retrieve information. Shaking her head, Sumui eyed Omoi specifically, we're going to surrender. Karui could feel her blood boil almost instantly, you have got to be kidding. Seeing Sumui refuse to budge she turned to Omoi, who as well seemed to be thinking it over. This is insane. Why? Surrender willingly and end up in an Uzumaki jail instead. That was lunacy. Omoi could see the merit of it, everyone knows Uzu takes in refugees and deserters. With the reputation Kumo has, it wouldn't be too far-fetched as far as Uzu is concerned for a team to run off. Plus, there's you. Omoi pointed at her deep crimson hair, whether you like it or not, you have Uzumaki blood. On that alone they'll probably let us in. After that however, well, that was anyone's guess. Sumui turned to face Karui now, truth is, with B locked in battle and not encountering our scouts like we planned, I have a feeling Azushio knows we're coming. Or at least knows that something is up. So, we play it like we're coming to warn them and we're bringing a lost Uzumaki to them and maybe they'll let us in easily enough. Or at least give them a chance to gain some info, without a heavy fight right off the bat. Shifting her weight and fighting the urge to ball her hands into fists, Karui frowned and spit off to the side, and if not, then we run. Hightail it back to Kumo and record the mission a failure. Sumui did her best to look nonchalant at the admission. In her mind this mission was most likely already a failure, but she had one goal she absolutely wanted to achieve that had nothing to do with the Uzumaki. Think you can hold it together long enough to pull this off? Seeing her leader's piercing eyes locked on her, Karui huffed and finally nodded along, I'll play nice, so long as I don't have to spend any real time around them. She didn't need a report hitting the Raikage's desk that she was less than cooperative. Sumui mentally breathed a huge sigh of relief. Good. Then let's get a move on. We shouldn't be that far by now. Turning and restarting their journey, Sumui led the way while Omoi grinned at the sulking Karui. You're gonna have to play nice with the Uzu ninja. Think you can handle that? It wasn't like she had a choice anymore in the matter now, did she? Karui gave him the finger as the tree cover started to thin out, so long as no one gets touchy you'll be just fine. You just don't get lost on one of your tangents. Chuckling, Omoi shook his head, no promises. Eyes turning up to watch their squad leader, his eyes hardened just a bit. Leader. Yes. Sumui answered his questioning tone without looking back, eyes and senses alert for any sign of enemy ninja. This is still about the mission, right? It took a lot of self-control not to falter in that moment, but we managed. What do you mean, Omoi? Tone sharp, she didn't want to worry over Omoi possibly sniffing out her real reasoning for wanting to continue on with this disaster of a mission. Well, at this point, like you said, the mission is really risky and probably doomed to failure. So why continue when we can return to just let the wreckage no be ended up in a battle? Omoi watched and waited, only partially mollified when he saw no odd movements from Simui. You've never been one to care so much. Simui sighed as she launched herself from the next branch. If war is on the horizon, and it sure seems like it is, the last thing we want is any mission failures. For all we know, this is vital to Kumo's war efforts. It's not our place to question, only to carry out our mission to the best of our abilities. Here she turned a watchful eye back towards the only male of the team. Unless you think we're incapable of completing any portion of this mission. Omoi shook his head and waved placating hands in front of himself. I'm not saying that. I just wanted to be sure was all. Honest. There was the self-assured, cool and collected leader that he knew. Her usual demeanor set him at ease. Turning back and spotting a road ahead, Simui allowed herself to drop to the ground. Well, I hope I've assuaged your concerns. Keep your chakra low and try to be as non-threatening as possible. Karui, any chakra nearby? The forest gave way to carefully paved roadway, a sure sign that they were close to wave. Karui hummed thoughtfully as she followed along with her team and idly looked up into the clouds. Something, no. A few signatures, yeah, but they're hazy, it's hard to get a bead on. Karui didn't get a chance to finish as her body locked in place. Struggling and failing to free herself, she could only watch as Omoi was half a second slow to respond, a lightly clothed woman in a blue bodysuit appearing behind him to hold chakra-covered fingers to his temple. Best not move, sword boy. Coward, says the Kumo nin. Long way from home, yeah. Enough. A burly man standing a head taller than everyone else dropped down from the trees, a smaller woman with glowing red eyes following behind him while keeping her gaze on Karui. The border is closed to you, Kumo nin. Unless you're looking to die, you'd best turn around and slink on back home. Edging her hands up in a surrendering manner, Simui turned to face the incoming ninja and nodded. We're deserters, with hopefully something the Azuki's would have some interest in. Pausing next to Karui, the much taller Kitaro smirked and wondered at his luck. He had promised En and Gosu that he'd do the Chinoik proud while on a patrol team. The Kami seemed to be smiling on him to drop an Uzumaki right in his lap. You do, huh? And what would that be? Keeping her hands up, Simui nodded to Karui. My teammate is an Uzumaki, and she wants to return to her clan. She did her best not to irritate the muscle-bound man with short hair. This was the dangerous part. Getting this team to believe them. Kitaro turned his head to look at the frozen Karui, and that the truth of it. With a motion from him, the woman behind him released her technique, allowing Karui to stumble and catch herself. Shaking herself and wondering at just what technique that was, Karui stood at her full height and turned to the man. Yeah, that's right. My team decided to stick with me when I left Kumo. I'm here to reunite with my clan. Fighting down the instant feeling of bile that rose in her throat, she reminded herself that this was for the mission. Only for the mission. It's been hell in Kumo, I just want to be with my family again. Chi. What did you feel in her blood? The smaller woman's eyes were sharp as she watched Karui for a moment. Lady Karen had given all of the Chinoik members a chance to feel Uzumaki blood samples for just such a occurrence. This girl's blood wasn't as pure, but it had the same feel to it. High chance she's telling the truth. At least when it comes to her blood. Enough that we should take them in. Her voice was quiet, barely above a whisper, but her squad leader heard her nonetheless. He was used to her manner by now. Ha! Kitaro was all grins as he clapped his hands together. That's good enough for me, Sam, let em go. The woman wrapped around Omoi's side and nodded, releasing him and bouncing away to Kitaro's side. Welp, there goes my fun. Odd way to have fun. Omoi rubbed at his shoulder where he hadn't noticed she had struck him once. She had to be a Hyuga, or had knowledge of their techniques. Sam winked at him, tossing her long brown hair over a shoulder. Oh, don't worry, stick around long enough and I'll show you all kinds of fun. Eyeing the sword poking over his shoulder, she wondered if he had any real skill with it or not. If they were deserters, she might get a chance to spar with him one day. Rolling his eyes, Kitaro removed a scroll and unsealed 3 paper tags. We don't have to seal you completely, but you'll need to wear these, precautions and all. Being genuinely wary, Sumui frowned lightly. Can you swear we'll come to no harm? Kitaro nodded easily. We're not sound. We treat our prisoners with the utmost respect. And if your story checks out, you'll be free to do as you please back in a zoo. Turning to the short woman, Kitaro handed her the seals. Place them with Yachi. Keeping quiet as she accepting the task from Kitaro, she dutifully walking forward to place a seal on Karu's right shoulder first before moving to Omoi next. Omoi watched her with something of an itch in his heart. What do these do? She didn't respond, only placing a seal on his shoulder before moving on to the unmolested Sumui. Some bedside manner. Sam bounced on her toes. That's just she doesn't talk much to people she doesn't know. Turning to ask her leader a question, she paused as he had a finger to his ear and was nodding along to someone on the other end of his radio. New orders maybe. Kitaro sighed and turned back to the ground. Yup, time to head back. Someone is going to meet us at the station to take them the rest of the way. Surveillance must have been listening in with one of their freaky fake birds or something. Sam shrugged and led the way, weaving between the others to take the lead. Anyone we know? Kitaro shook his head. Most likely not, someone closer to the higher-ups. It certainly wasn't information that he was privy to. Ah, you poor bastards. Sam had heard rumors that something truly big was going down, and chatter over the radio had reports that some lucky S.O.B. ran into an advance squad of Iwa scouts. Now that they had found a Kumo group, it was beginning to paint a real interesting picture. Sure hope your story checks out. Though she wasn't one for blood, she'd drop these Kumo intruders in an instant if given the order. Sumui sighed as she followed along behind the mute chi, her own chakra still accessible but muted, slow and hard to move. It will, because it's the truth. At least now they had an in with Uzushio. Now the next stage was coming up, getting close to the Uzumaki clan. Kitaro was grinning as he sidled up next to Karui. Man, I don't get to hang with the higher-ups much like En and Gosu do, but you Uzumaki really do stand out, don't ya? No one could mistake that bright red hair. Yeah, funny that. Karui edged away from him a bit, eyes ahead and focused on the relaxed Sumui. Maybe if she believed it hard enough she could be as cool and collected as her squad leader. Just can't help that Uzumaki blood. Ain't that the truth? Really sucks what the world does with ya, but Uzumaki-sama has done right by bringing as many of ya back together. You'll see, we're doing right by the Uzumaki clan and Uzushio, just you wait. Kitaro wondered if he could wheedle some praise for his clan out of Uzumaki-sama for this. Or at least an honorable mention. Can't wait. Trying and just barely succeeding to keep the contempt from her voice, Karui sighed and mentally prepared for what came next. She didn't want to put up with men and women like this, doting on her because of her cursed blood. This would never be her home. The wagon cart squeaked and groaned as Fu and Naruto sat together in the driver's seat and kept pace behind the more luxurious coach holding the daimyo and she and the priestess. While Kayuki had asked them repeatedly if they wanted to come back as they didn't need to keep watch 100% of the time, Fu spoke for them and admitted that this suited them just fine. The clear sky was above them, the warm air was nice on their skin, and they had some real freedom here. More than either of them expected at this point in their lives. Fu most of all. Said girl was relaxed into Naruto's side, having taken a short break after she returned from flying above them and scouting ahead for obstacles. Having found none, she returned to her girlfriend. You know, after this mission, what should we do? Naruto shrugged, mind more at peace now that whatever link she and Naruto had seemed to have calmed down, doesn't matter to me, so long as I get to stick with you. Flatterer. Giggling and nuzzling further into the blonde, Fu sighed and gained a thoughtful look. You know. Isn't it kinda exciting? You're going to be an aunt soon. Yup. And the world weeps at the chaos that's coming. Naruto didn't know a thing about babies or families. But she knew that she wanted to spoil all of the little soon-to-be-born brats. She was going to be the bestest auntie ever. Believe it. What about you? What's got you thinking? Well, Fu sat up straight and kicked her legs as they continued on. Nothing yet really. It's just something exciting, something new. I never thought I'd have the chance to interact with babies, or children at all. Much like other Jinchuriki, Fu had been considered just slightly better than a living weapon. To have such a carefree life now. It was still all so much of a dream. A dream that she actually got to live for once. Naruto could understand. It wasn't like she, or Naruto, had much time with infants or even other children. Now she and Fu were all about experiencing everything they could. Which meant Naruto's kids being born would be a new opportunity for them to experience life. Well, don't you worry, we'll have lots of new adventures. As many as you want. And if they got far enough along, who knew? Maybe one of them could give being a parent a shot. Behind them there was a groan and Fu reached back to whack one of the two tied and bound men in the head. Shouldn't we just seal them away and be done with it? Naruto shook her head. Nah, I want that brother of theirs to see em and get real pissed off. I want a good fight this time. Not everything revolves around fighting, Na-chan. Says you, fighting is a wonderful stress reliever. Oh, better than. I said wonderful, not the best, let's not go crazy. Naruto chuckled as Fu slapped her playfully on the shoulder. Today wasn't looking to be so bad after all. Ahead of them Kiyuki finally relaxed and leaned against the side of the coach. We should be at the capital by tomorrow. Are you worried at all? Her eyes turned to the newest addition to the group, the in hiding and true daimyo to the land of vegetables. Haruna sighed but shook her head. Had you asked me that yesterday I would have said of course. But now, especially after seeing the way Naruto handled the two younger brothers of Renga, I can actually hope for once. Here she gave Kiyuki and Shion a soft smile. This is going to work out. Shion nodded resolutely and crossed her arms. Of course it is Naruto-sama's will after all. Kiyuki rolled her eyes. Don't mind her, but yes. Azushio really wants stability to return to the region. With that, it means we are willing to do whatever is necessary to help you. And after I agree to an alliance with you. What then? Haruna didn't think they were the type to double-cross those that they called friends. But she would be remiss to not at least ask. She had seen betrayal more than once in her life by now. Kiyuki turned to Shion. The land of birds is next, isn't it? Something is going on over there. It took a moment for Shion to get her mind off of her Naruto-sama, but eventually she did and adjusted herself accordingly. Yes. Apparently there's some trouble involving a cursed warrior that is causing some unease. Something we could look into. Well, hopefully it'll keep Naruto busy, or we might have to send her back home. Kiyuki didn't want to get rid of the young woman, but her tendency to go straight into battle mode was a little hard to explain away for negotiations. Behind them and enjoying the warm breeze, Fu perked up with a giggle. Chakra signature, male, headed our way. Tilting her head just a bit as she tried to glean any information she could, the mint-haired woman shrugged. Chakra feels a bit like the two behind us. Naruto handed over the reins to Fu and stood, stretching out her back by twisting this way and that. I do believe that's my cue to get up to trouble. Always happy for a chance to watch her girlfriend show off, Fu did have to at least pretend to be the voice of reason. Not too much, again, we should keep him alive for now. Giving her girlfriend a wink, Naruto turned to a single man bursting free from the tree line between the two wagons. I'll try to hold back. At the least, she wouldn't eat him. Samui didn't know what she expected as the Azushio ninja team escorted him across the Great Naruto Bridge. Having never visited Wave or Azu before, they could only speculate and go off of rumors. Was it a strict military dictatorship the likes of Kumo and Iwa were used to? Or more civilian-oriented like Konoha? Time was coming up to show her one way or another. Karui grunted as they joined the flow of people traffic over the bridge and first entered Wave proper. If there was anything she was used to, it was the stares of curious or somewhat hateful people. When younger she had gotten many praises for her crimson hair, both from those who hoped she was a new breed for Kumo's future and some who were jealous for what she represented. Even so the stares and mutterings she heard now weren't much different. She was a showpiece, being paraded as some special creature for the masses against what she truly wanted. So long as she kept her mind on her mission she could stop her itching fingers from reaching for her kunai. Only just though. Kitaro walked along with a smug look on his face as Chi led the way down the main street and away from the port and market area. Next to him the well-endowed blonde, Samui if he remembered correctly, looked up to him. Where exactly are we going? Sniffing and pointedly looking far away from the blonde with the impressive chest, Kitaro shrugged. Like we said, meeting up with someone to take you the rest of the way to Azu. But Wave isn't connected by land to anyone else. Samui knew that for a fact. The bridge was the only land connection they had. All other movement and trade was conducted by shipping. Kitaro chuckled, "You'll see in a bit." Raising a hand to another team that dashed over the rooftops, the Chinook clan member put any worry about the Kumo team out of his mind. They weren't going to be his problem for very long. Now how to properly write this report to make his team look the best. Maybe a bit of embellishment about how long they had stalked the Kumo team. Something to think on. Samui settled in as they continued on a well-paved road, following along with excitable citizens who all seemed to be going in the same direction. A pigtailed boy with black hair caught her eye for a moment, before he was pulled along by what looked like three younger sisters. Huffing and shaking herself, she ignored the newer buildings and clean streets as they came upon the large glass and concrete construction that was a train station. Well, at least that question was answered. Omoi was already mumbling as Chi paused and turned back to them, motioning to the group off to the side to keep out of the way of normal traffic. An underground train network. A good idea in terms of troop and supplies movement. Certainly hard to sabotage when you don't know where it is. Samui sighed, it's also an easy way to keep your nation's restoration a secret. No wonder we always thought Azushiogakur was still a minor threat. This had to take some time. The team came together as the Azu patrol team stood off to the side with Kitaro in the lead with his arms crossed. Well, this is where we part ways. Keep your noses clean, lest something bad happens to ya. Kitaro was all grins still as Sam leaned around him and pointed at Omoi. Step out of line, I'll be there to paralyze ya nice and tender like. Omoi shivered, I believe it. From behind him another woman's voice called out, you should, we've given the go-ahead for shoot first ask questions later policies when it comes to Iwa and Kumo right now. Everyone turned to take in the bright red-headed Karen as she walked along with the silver-haired Kabuto and another slightly taller blonde that the Kumo team recognized right away. Yugito. Samui's yell was instant and nearly betrayed her real thoughts, but Omoi and Karui seemed so surprised as well that she was hopeful that they didn't catch her slip. Yugito stopped with Karen, bowing lightly to the team while Karen dismissed the Azu patrol team. Hey there Samui, see you've gotten yourself into some trouble. Hands on his hips and frown on his face, Omoi's mind was doing overtime trying to come to terms with what this meant. You're alive. We thought you dead after not getting any word from you in so long. Omoi looked her up and down, seeing that she didn't seem to be harmed in any way. Maybe she took her mission along a different route. She seemed close to the Uzumaki at the least. Samui shot Omoi a frown which cowed him quickly before turning back to Yugito herself. You were captured then. Sighing but nodding, Yugito turned to Karen, the Azukage beat me soundly and offered me a choice. So here I am. But I hear you've run away from Kumo. Do tell. Her eyes hardened and the three Kumo nin had a moment of worry. Was she still loyal to Kumo? They needed time to talk to her in private, straighten things out. Clapping her hands to get everyone's attention, Karen motioned back towards a steaming train. Let's get a move on back to the city for now. I'm sure you have lots of catching up to do. Honestly, she didn't fully believe it for 1 minute that they were deserters, but Yugito had asked them to give them a chance. Plus, Karui was an Uzumaki by blood. Naruto would be rather cross if they didn't at least try with her. This way. Turning and walking back through massive steel and glass doors with Kabuto just behind her shoulder, she let Yugito attend to the group. Samui stayed next to Yugito, face carefully blank as she tried to gauge the older Jinchuriki's mindset. You're really here, alive. We truly thought you were dead. At the minimum Samui could admit that there was a relief that washed over her at seeing the other blonde in the flesh. The thought of Yugito's death had been the largest reason behind accepting this mission against Azushio. Smiling softly and listening both to Samui and to her tenant, Yugito placed a hand softly on Samui's shoulder as they boarded the train back to the city. You've been worried, but I promise that even though I was defeated and a prisoner, I was treated with respect and dignity. As if these barbarians know anything about that. Karu's real emotions slipped out once they were away from the press of normal people. She regretted her words near instantly as Karen's eyes locked onto her. Waving her hands to dispel the thought, Karui chuckled nervously, sorry, just a little worn out is all. Karen shook her head, I get it, you know. Kumo is all you know and propaganda is a powerful thing. Continuing to walk down the center aisle as she waggled a finger over her shoulder, but Azushio really is meant to be a peaceful city. A nation that talks and negotiates first before anything else. Here she paused and turned, motioning to a set of bench seats. Come sit, and we'll talk. Sumui, Karui, and Omoi all sat together on one side of a bench table, while Yugito and Karen sat together across from them. Omoi raised an eyebrow as Kabuto left, continuing to where the engineer must be, most likely to start their journey. Karen folded her hands on the table top, eyes sharp as she watched them. But it was Yugito who addressed them first. So you're deserting Kumo? Why? Karui took a breath to open her mouth, but Karen held up a hand to pause her. Another hand made a motion from her forehead to her chin and a blank onoman mask formed over her face. After that she motioned for Karui to continue, who felt a bit on edge but decided to stick to their story. I wanted to leave. What Kumo has planned for Azu is wrong and I wanted to rejoin my clan. I'm tired of being some tool for the raikage. Sumui and Omoi supported me. Everyone braced themselves as the train began to move. The screeching of metal rubbing on metal filled the cabin for a bit before tapering off as they sped up. Yugito frowned but nodded. It wasn't impossible if she thought about it. Karui knew what happened to Uzumaki women eventually in the village in the clouds. Maybe she saw the writing on the wall and didn't want to end up as a new generation of breeder. Or was there more going on here because they were dealing with an attempted invasion at the moment? While I'm glad to see you've opened your eyes a bit, what do you think the raikage is going to do? He won't just let you go. I know that. Karui believed that part completely. If she ever truly did want to run away, the raikage would have hunter parties after her for probably the rest of her life. But between ending up broken and, well, worse, I'd rather take my chances for some freedom. Turning to Sumui, Yugito raised a delicate eyebrow. And you're okay with this? You always struck me as a level-headed by-the-book squad leader, Sumui. Holding the other woman's gaze, Sumui nodded. Some things are worth the risk. Seeing Yugito's eyes turn his way, Omoi shrugged and tried his best to look indifferent, being a realist about it. What Kumo is doing is wrong. So I stick by my team. Karen hummed as the train car rocked a bit. So you say, tell me, what if I said the raikage is our aging blowhard who doesn't know he's already lost? Would that anger you? Omoi shook his head. Not at all. It's the truth. He'd have to make sure to remember to put this in his report properly later. Watching Karen hum again but say nothing else, Yugito continued, well, since you are an Uzumaki by blood you'll be treated a bit different than normal. They'll. Clearing her throat and shaking her head, Karen turned to Yugito. We should leave the decision of where she wants to go right away up to her. This is a new land and a new people she's going to be around. It's a big culture shock and maybe she'll want to stick with her team until she is more used to us. My apologies, I should have considered that. Yugito nodded and steered the conversation to lighter topics while next to her Karen watched on with an unseen frown. Because Karui was lying through her teeth and Omoi was holding back the truth as well. The only half-honest one here was Sumui, which begged the question of what exactly was she actually here for. Time was running out for them, because if Naruto got a hold of them, Karui having Uzumaki blood probably wouldn't save her like she was potentially hoping. Karen wasn't interested in seeing family kill family, but she had heard some stories from the Uzumaki rescues from Kumo and none of them were good. There was a chance Karui was too far gone. Or at the least really didn't want anything to do with them. Sumui asked the one question she wanted to know more than anything else at the moment. How did you survive all this time? The raikage said that you should have self-destructed if you had failed your mission. Yugito leaned back in her seat, looking up as she tried to dredge up just why she hadn't done that. After Uzumaki-sama beat me soundly, he set about removing those seals from me. After that, he gave me a chance and I accepted it. Omoi nodded. So you didn't follow through with it because you couldn't. Reasonable. Rolling her eyes as this cloak and dagger song and dance wasn't to her liking anymore. Karen more than likely was using that mask to gather information anyway and they were under seal. No point to hide it. No. If I had it still, I wouldn't use it. Azu has given me a chance at redemption, and I took it. Yugito grinned internally at the wide-eyed looks she received from the others. They were surprised. Good. I wanted a fresh start, a new life. Free from combat and destruction. A life that's mine to choose the path, not just another soulless tool. Blinking and trying to figure out if the older nin was being honest or not, Karui couldn't fathom it. Why come out and say something like that now? But that's to go against everything Kumo stands for. Yugito pointed a deceptively delicate finger at her. Is that not what you're doing? Karui cut herself off as she realized that this cover story was exactly that. Great. Well, yeah, but hearing it from you is just surprising is all. Samui nodded with some relief. Yes. You were one of the most loyal of us. To hear you talk of betraying the village is surprising. Yugito winked at her. Oh, just wait, I'm just full of surprises. Now, how to get Samui away from these two? She had a feeling the other blonde was keeping something from them. Maybe she could cook something up on the way back the tower. Hoshigaki Kisame was a lot of things that he was happy to admit. A battle maniac, a sadistic killer with a penchant for extreme violence and an appreciator of healthy mature women everywhere. However, walking along and bouncing his same hada on his shoulder, he considered his options for the near future. Azushio was a hotbed for activity right now, and battle was almost guaranteed so long as he kept going. But that also proved one big problem. Kisame didn't just want to slaughter any and everyone on his way. He wanted a real fight, something to get his heart pumping. So that meant only one person was on his mind. That Uzumaki brat, the Azukage. Naruto. Sure, the last time they had met the kid could barely hold out against him, but at the same time the kid had gotten a good hit in. That was years ago, surely the kid had improved a great deal. He was a legendary Kage now. He had to have learned some neat skills over all this time. So that meant getting his attention. Should Kisame kill a few patrols to get his attention? Maybe send one or two members back with a message. Just walk on in and demand they fight. Thinking too hard wasn't his thing. Itachi was normally the brains of the operation. Blasted Uchiha, asshole cared about his little brother more than helping him fight. Boring. On his shoulder same hada rustled and rattled its scales together, grabbing Kisame's attention. Yeah, I know you're getting impatient too. I promise, this kid is worth the wait. Kisame's grin turned feral as the sentient blade settled down, a feeling of anticipation rolling over him. He considered that it was another day's travel to the coast, and then a few days' swim to Azu. He would go there directly and figure it out as he went. He was a man of action. Of war and blood. All this thinking was starting to give him a headache. Just you wait, brat, I'm coming to knock your teeth in. Shivering and not knowing why, Naruto read over a report while his office was still full of people. Was the day over with yet? No. Balls. I'd like to mention that any one of you can make yourselves useful somewhere else, you don't have to crowd my office. Naruto's eyes landed pointedly on Sakura and Sasuke, who were still lounging about where his clones would normally be doing paperwork. They had been joined by Ino, who was gossiping with Sakura while Tayuya was sitting on the edge of his desk, helping a bit with reading over reports after Karen had left to retrieve the Kumo team. Sasuke waved over his shoulder as he lounged about on the couch. You could just order us to go away. Naruto considered that for a brief moment before frowning. Would you listen? No, but you could do it anyway if it'll make you feel better. I'm teaching your kids how explosion seals work as soon as they can hold a brush. Sasuke gave him the finger. I'm teaching your kids how to properly throw shuriken. Lord knows you can't. Naruto gasped in horror. How dare he? I can throw shuriken just fine. You could be standing next to a barn and still miss. Asshole. Idiot. Boys. It was Tayuya's voice that froze both young men. Naruto had been looking forward to a good scrap. He kinda missed Naruto now. Can you act your age? For like half a day. Naruto sulked. He started it. What are you, 6? Let it go. Tayuya leaned forward and punched him in the shoulder. Or should I give you a real reason to cry? No, ma'am. Sasuke chuckled and went back to resting, whipped. Sakura leaned over and casually pinched him hard in the upper arm, eliciting a yelp from him. Don't start. Yes, ma'am. Naruto fought back his own chuckle as his desk intercom chimed to life. Reaching forward to press the call button, he cleared his throat. What's up, Kian? There was a click before the radio responded in return. Word from Lady Karen. Kumo team claims to want to defect, however 2 members need interrogation while 1 member may actually be honest in their intentions. There was a pause before the other woman's voice continued. There is an Uzumaki with them, she is one of the ones that needs to be interrogated further. Naruto nodded even though she couldn't see him. Roger that. Separate them and bring the Uzumaki to me directly. Let Karen take care of the other interrogation and Yugito can deal with the actual defector. Naruto released the intercom and leaned back in his chair, eyes turned to the ceiling in thought. Akumo Uzumaki. Was it that dark-skinned girl he saw at the summit? What was her name again? Karui, right. Be careful, if Karen is saying she isn't being completely honest, then she could be a threat. Kurama didn't want to come out and directly say that a member of his clan could be an enemy, but these things could happen. Just look at the Hyuga. Yeah, Naruto knew logically that, but it was still hard to consider that one of his clansmen would be happy with what Kumo had been doing. But at the minimum hadn't cared enough about the rest of the Uzumaki's plight to do anything about it. Everyone had different circumstances, he supposed. Looking down into Tayuya's confident smile, Naruto nodded and set aside his work. You wanna stay for this? Standing and taking a small pile of reports on patrol movements with her, Tayuya nodded. Yeah, I'll hang out with the others. Other actual Uzumaki opinions may be needed besides yours. With a wink, Tayuya left to join the others, forcing Sasuke to sit up so she could claim a spot on the couch to continue working. Naruto watched it all with a smile on his face before picking up some new form that required his attention. The Hotaru were requesting construction of a firing range closer to their property. Now why was that, he wondered. Reading on, he could see that the Hotaru and the Zozensho were working together with the engineering group from Spring on some newer long-range weaponry that needed to be tested more frequently. Easy enough to approve since it looked like the Zozensho were happy to finance it all. Setting his stamp at the end of the collection of forms, he set it aside before picking up the next set. A petition from the Yuki clan to allow for public business operations. Again, another easy approval and one he was happy to give his seal. At least they were working on being self-sufficient now, though he wished they weren't so set on paying back the debts. He had promised them that he built their home with no plans to build them for it. But trying to get Hana to back down from anything was proving to be a useless endeavor. After some time and some light ribbing back and forth between him and his team, there was finally a chime from the intercom on his desk. A button press and Naruto focused a bit. Yes, Kian. I have an escorting Karui of Kumo here for you. Well, this was it. Moment of truth on whether Karui was being truthful or not. Naruto grunted and pressed the call button once more. Send her on in. Naruto waited and watched as the pair walked into his office, En opening the door and leading the way. Naruto gave the older man a grin and waved him off as Karui and he stood in front of his desk. You're dismissed, En. Go back to your normal duties. Yes, Azukage-sama. With a salute, En turned sharply and was gone, flashy glasses sparking in the late afternoon sun. Left alone before the devil himself, Karui did her best to glare down Naruto. She hadn't liked him when she finally got a look at him at the summit, and she really didn't like him now. If her chakra hadn't been sealed, she wondered if she could risk getting a few good hits in on him or not. Mentally rolling his eyes at the irritated woman before him, Naruto subtly activated a seal under his desktop, a short-range truth seal. So, Karui was it. Report says you left Kumo to defect and return to the Uzumaki clan. That true? Moment of truth. Karui went to nod right away, best to get this over with and really sell it, but found that she couldn't. No. That wasn't what she wanted to say. Why couldn't she move? Seeing the confusion beginning to crawl all over her face, Naruto sighed and sat up straight. He had a feeling that it was too good to be true. Idly he noted that Tayuya and the others were paying rapt attention to her now. Yeah, I didn't think so. So what were you originally here for? To capture any Uzumaki breeders that we could, destroy targets of opportunity, and return to Kumo with Killer Bee covering our retreat. Karui could feel dread filling her heart. Just what was this? The seal they put on her shoulder earlier? No, she had been able to lie about their mission easily before now. Something the Uzumaki head did. But what? Well, there went any hope that Kumo was being sensible. Naruto laced his fingers together and tented his hands in front of his face. So, you aren't here to rejoin the Uzumaki then? What do you really think about us? You're vermin. Trash that doesn't deserve to remain. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have this cursed and useless blood. Karui had known it for years. Kumo higher-ups had always hoped that she would gain something from the Uzumaki blood in her veins. That none of the better traits had ever presented themselves had just shown her to be a disappointment, but they eventually banked that one day she would give birth to future Uzumaki after they had gotten a few male children from the program. A program destroyed by the man in front of her. Well, she's probably a lost cause, Naruto. Kurama's voice was quiet, gentle, and Naruto appreciated that. Yeah, I know. Naruto watched her quietly for a short minute before groaning and leaning back in his chair, hands flat on his desk. Well, what the hell am I going to do with you now? Yeah, you have Uzumaki blood, but you sure as well aren't an Uzumaki. Do I keep you here and try to rehabilitate you, or send you back to Kumo? I'd rather die than stay here. Karui had no problem saying the truth there now that it was apparent to her that he had done something to make sure she couldn't lie. Whether she was going to die or not was up in the air, but she had a reasonable idea that he wouldn't just kill her outright. Whatever you did to Yugito to make her change her mind, I want no part of that. Trust me, I didn't have to do much there. Naruto would happily leave the clingy kitty alone if he could. Do so at your own peril. God, you're just as horny as the Matatabi. Naruto tried his best to ignore the Biju's cackling. So you want to go back to Kumo then? Seeing Karui nod, Naruto decided he wasn't going to fight it. She obviously hated him and the Uzumaki clan a great deal. That was a lifetime of teaching that would probably take even longer to unprogram, something she didn't seem to even want herself. I'm just letting you know, you could have a life here. Hell, you don't even have to rejoin the clan. Live on your own, see that we aren't the evil people that Kumo has led you to believe. Why even Yugito is. I want to go back home. To Kumo. Karui interrupted him easily, not caring about sassing off to this wannabe cage. She had no respect for him in the end. Even though I'm most likely going to wipe that village off the map. Naruto's voice turned cold. Here he was trying to give her a chance and she seemed to want nothing more than to spit in his face. Great. I mean it, I'm going to destroy Kumo. If you return, you're going to die with them. Then I will die with my people. Karu's eyes did not leave his, wishing to her core that she could draw her blade in this moment. Naruto could tell the truth of that without any seals and shrugged, releasing the seal and watching her stumble a bit. Fine. Know this. I really did want to make things work between us and Kumo. But some things can't be forgiven. Here he made a clone, which walked around his desk to latch onto Karu's shoulder. Said young woman nearly shrugged him off, but the clone's grip was like iron, like I give a damn. The Raikage has decided you deserve to be crushed, so that is what we'll do. Naruto waved her off, hope you make peace with that. And then they were gone, his clone delivering her to the Raikage's office while his office was peacefully quiet for a short while. Well, that was something. Standing and walking over to him slowly, Ino placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, so you decided Kumo wasn't worth the effort. Yeah, but I'm giving that honor to someone else who is already on the way. One last mission for a very tired Uzumaki ninja. Naruto didn't continue on the subject, instead wondering about what was going on closer to home. I'll have to assume that the other ninja from her team will want to be sent home as well. Let me make a clone to go and find him. Naruto did just that, making a clone that ran off to hunt down where it could feel Karen's chakra. But that does leave the third team member that was being honest about why they were here. Ino shrugged as she shimmied her way into his lap, playfully pecking him on the cheek. Don't stress over it so much. It'll all get dealt with and then we can relax tonight at home. She luxuriated at the feeling of his strong arms around her middle. Deciding that she wasn't wrong, Naruto wondered at the state of things. His forces could deal with Iwa and Kumo, short of their heaviest of hitters. With B retreating, how long before that problem would resurface? Would the Raikage himself come along next time? Best not to give him a chance then. I sure wish this day was over and done with. Ino could agree, it's been a busy one to be sure. Just think, at this rate things will all be worked out before the week is over. Naruto couldn't find fault in that logic. One way or another things really would be dealt with. Iwa was going to be their vassal, Kumo was going to be eliminated and all that was left was Akatsuki. Yeah, like that was something easy to deal with. Here's hoping. And then maybe he could finally get some quality sleep. Evening had descended and with it time to finally call it a day and return home. Heaving a deep and blissful sigh, Naruto lowered himself fully into the warm waters of his family baths as he gazed up into the star-filled sky. Saying it had been a busy few days was putting it lightly. the stress of which had built up in ways he hadn't even noticed. Here and now he was happy to let that stress melt away as he smiled and enjoyed time with his loved ones. Tayuya, Kotohime and Karen seemed to share the same thoughts, Karen taking one side of him while Kotohime smiled blissfully on his other. Tayuya was in front of them, waist deep in the water while reading Hinata and the others the riot act. Off in a corner on the bath Jugo, Sasam, and Kin all relaxed together quietly and watched on. Of all the brain-dead things you lot could have done. Jumping head first into a trap laid by Iwa of all places. Tayuya seemed to be the most incensed over the situation. Mostly because she still couldn't get the image of a half-dead Hinata floating in a tube out of her mind. They had nearly lost one of their own. One of her sisters. All from an easily avoidable mistake. By the thousand if I could I'd beat some real sense into you. She wouldn't of course, but the thought was there. Ino sighed and nodded along, resigned to her fate with the others. Look, I'm not going to make excuses here, we fucked up. Bad. It's not something we're looking to repeat, right? She turned to Hinata and Honoka, who both nodded quickly. Besides, with relations between us, Iwa, and Kumo right now, no one is leaving Azushio without good reason anyway. Least of all us. Grunting but nodding along, Tayuya relaxed back a bit. You're damned right you aren't. I still say you should be on house arrest, for a week at least. Rolling his eyes, Naruto finally reached up to poke Tayuya and caused her to stumble in the warm waters. Alright, you've had your chance to rant, let's call it a bit. Ignoring her grumbling as she turned around and settled herself on the other side of Karen, he turned cool eyes to three of the women who he loved deeply but was currently upset with. As for you, there should be something done about this. Hinata nodded her head slowly as she acknowledged that this was much like what they had done to him after the Orochimaru incident. They couldn't balk at the consequences now. Of course, darling. We will abide by your will. This was the first time in a long time she could remember Naruto actually being upset with them. It was not a good feeling. Sky blue eyes floating over all three of them, Naruto kept a cool gaze finally on Hinata herself. It isn't just that you three know better. You took a risk that wasn't necessary. Seeing Ino wanted to argue, he held up a hand to silence her for the moment and continued on. Life is nothing without risk, I get that, but stupid risks are different. Especially jumping face first into an obvious trap. So, 1 week, no missions. You're stuck either at home or the tower. No discussion on that. Sighing and lowering into the water a bit, Honoka nodded along with his words. A week to rest doesn't sound so bad. She could catch up on her book series finally. Maybe check in with the border crew and see what they've gotten up to while she was away. Ino was much of the same thoughts, figuring that she could rest up and get pampered by her love while she found stuff around the city to keep her busy. All in all, not such a bad way to spend a week. Hinata was waiting for the other shoe to drop as she saw the look in Naruto's eyes for what it was. Mischief. And no nookie. There were the indignant looks he fully expected. Hey, that's torture. Cruel. Inhumane. Throwing his head back and laughing while Kotohime and Karen giggle at his sides, Naruto shakes his head. Aha, that's why it's a punishment. Maybe next time you'll consider your actions and decide if it's worth it in the future. Ino turned watery eyes towards him, going on the offensive and pressing her bust against a surprised Hinata, but whiskers. How can you give us up for a week? Don't you love us anymore? Full on puppy eyes now, she even tried to work in some fake tears. Naruto wasn't having it however, I really would prefer my wives to remain alive and healthy. And if I have to do this to make sure they get the message then so be it. Besides, that's not the real punishment yet. Pausing for dramatic effect, Naruto pointed a lazy finger at each of them. The academy has asked if members of the Uzumaki clan would provide some lectures from time to time. Guess who volunteered? Ino. Hinata and Honoka all exchanged looks before turning back to Naruto and pointing at themselves, Hinata taking the lead. I suppose that would be us beloved. Got it in one Hinata. Honoka shook her head and released a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. Honestly, after everything, it's an acceptable punishment. Ino turned to her quickly. Oh, come on Honoka, don't be a pushover. We gotta at least fight back and get our nookie time. A week without pampering. No. Absolutely not. She'd die. Hinata pulled away from the excitable blonde with a smile and poked her in the ribs. Considering we could have died and never had our Naruto-kun ever again, I think this is fair, Ino. Idly she rubbed her belly under the murky waters. She had news of her own to share if she could find the right moment. Ino looked between the relieved-looking Honoka and the tired-looking Hinata and gave it up. They really were lucky to even be alive, and if she was honest with herself, Naruto was being rather lenient with them. With a huff she dropped back down into the waters, relaxing into Hinata's side. This week is gonna suck. Tayuya rolled her eyes and floated over to her friend, slinging an arm over Ino's shoulders. Oh, give it up, the week will be over before you know it and you can go back to being the regular nuisance you love to be. Relaxing in the redhead's embrace and accepting her love for what it was, Ino smiled softly. Sorry we worried you. You better be. Part of Tayuya could finally relax completely, here and having one of her best friends in her arms safe and sound. Naruto couldn't help but agree. I am just happy that you're all home and alive. Don't scare us like that again, okay? Maybe they need a real punishment. I've still got my green goo to dish out. Karen's smirk sent a shiver up Hinata's spine, which intensified when she saw Naruto give a nod of approval. Guess she was on a strict diet for a while as well. She did almost die. A thought coming to her, Ino poked Tayuya in the ribs to get her to release her. I should pick up a few things to do around the city. Sooner or later I'm going to want to join the club with Tayuya and the others, but I know I'm not going to want to sit around doing nothing. Maybe tool around with the city patrol. Ninja reception could always use a hand as well now that she thought about it. Hinata joined that thought, really starting to think about it. I've been enjoying the work the clans have been giving me. Keeping up relations between all of our various clans is fulfilling work. Receiving a poke from Honoka, Hinata turns and allows the older woman to re-braid her hair. Ino points at the dark-haired woman. You gonna let the Hotaru make you their clan head eventually? They really are adamant about making you their representative. Hinata waves a hand to ward off the thought. I can't. I'm an Uzumaki woman and I'm happy to keep it that way. Besides, Neji would make a better clan head than me. Leaning back with an arm around the content Karen while the other cradled the dozing Kotohime, Naruto is relaxed as he watches his girls chat and banter back and forth. This was why he fought so hard. To keep this precious family of his together and whole. To give the whole world the chance to have moments just like this. Peace was worth the headaches and the occasional spilled blood. Honoka was focused on Hinata's hair, weaving it into a tight but intricate braid that would eventually fall to her mid-back. Her thoughts, however, turned to the present. What became of that Kumo team that was captured? Seeing Naruto was starting to doze, Karen took up the question herself. I questioned that guy, Omoi, but there wasn't anything interesting there. Just like Karui, he had nothing but contempt for us and wanted to return to Kumo. He was here for a mission, nothing more. The third member though, Sumui was it. She had been telling the truth. She was now under Yugito's care with some extra surveillance, just in case. Snorting and coming out of his doze, Naruto took over. Yeah, funny that. She apparently only took the mission to infiltrate us because she thought I had killed Yugito. Seeing her friend alive and well had changed her mind. Naruto shrugged and put the thought of Kumo blondes out of his mind. Whatever her reason, Yugito asked me to come and check on her tomorrow. So I'll ask why she stayed then, I guess. Hearing all of the women around him collectively groan, Naruto eyed them all. What did I miss? Tayuya shook her head and turned to Ino. Me and you will go and check out this Sumui woman, yeah. Seeing Ino nod, Tayuya pointed a finger at her love. You keep your butt planted in that chair tomorrow, got it? No running off. Shrugging and deciding he probably didn't want to know, Naruto nodded along. Sure thing. I'll stay put. Returning to his light doze with Karen in his side while the rest of the girls returned to their chatter, Naruto decided that life was once again good. Reality could bother him in the morning. Hinata seemed to have other ideas as the doors opened and Kikyo led several of the Uzumaki women along to join them in the bath. Oh, darling, I have a bit of a update. Yeah, Hinata. Naruto didn't realize how tired he was, but a nap sounded great right about now. A small oops, but it seems we weren't as careful as we thought. Hinata's voice pierced right through the tired haze of Naruto's mind. He was wide awake in an instant. What happened? Who else got hurt? Was it something permanent? Eyes locking onto the suddenly bashful woman, Naruto was only slightly clued in as Honoka and Karen started to giggle. I'm missing something, aren't I? I meant you and I, darling. Seeing his continued confusion on his face, Hinata took pity on him. During our love making, the dots started to line up. Wait, no way. His senses had been tingling lately, but he hadn't had a moment's rest to check. A blink, a thought, and yup. There it was, a small spark of life. Nope, two there. Oh boy. Going limp against the rocks as a suddenly awake Kotohime abandoned him to gush over the shorter woman, Naruto cursed his luck. Ino gave a triumphant shout and thrust a fist in the air. Ha! I was right. Pay up, suckers. Tayuya shook her head as Hinata was soon surrounded by the rest of the family offering her congratulations. Should have known. Kotohime nodded along. I had no doubts at all. Hinata was more of a lover than a fighter. If anyone was going to join the baby ranks next, it was going to be her. Of course, you'll probably be staying here on the island with me more from now on. Hinata sighed but took in the happy but focused look from Naruto and nodded along in the end, at least until these conflicts are over. I can't stay cooped up forever. Shaking his head in the negative, Naruto thumped his chest once. Don't worry, my rule still applies. Here, the mansion, or the academy. Nowhere else. He couldn't turn into a super controlling mess now. That was a one-way ticket to the dog house. Karen was soon up and adjusting her glasses. Common. This deserves a party. Let's celebrate another Uzumaki on the way. Yeah. The cheers that answered her set the rest of the night's mood well enough. The Uzumaki would share the news in the morning, but for now this was just for them. It had been a long night, A decided. Having not just one but two of his ninja dumped on top of his desk by a smiling whiskered blonde had already put him in a horrible mood. But now as they stood before his desk after giving their own reports on the situation in Azu, his mood if anything was downright horrible. Not that he could show it. So to sum it up, B stayed behind to fight Jiraiya of the Sannin, your team never met up with our scouts and tried to press on, and now possibly after getting captured, Simui has either defected or more likely, has been captured for more questioning. Firm eyes took in the two remaining members of Team Simui. He had no doubts about Omoi's loyalty nor his decision-making. No, his concern lay with the Uzumaki blood. Karui had never given him concern for her loyalty in the past and her annual reviews had never shown concern neither. But a team leader left behind and a woman of Uzumaki blood returned from the very clan home. From a man known to be fanatical for saving Uzumaki. I was beginning to have questions. Not for now though, there were more important actions to take and the kids were starting to sweat. You're dismissed for now. Report to medical for inspections and debriefing. We'll be returning to Azu once B returns. Having listened to their reports, I had taken note of the ease with which Azushio had handled their infiltration and extraction. Most likely his scouts, much like Simui's team, hadn't even made it to Wave. It was time to see the situation for himself. Omoi stood a bit straighter, saluting his cage with some relief in his heart. Sir, does that mean we are fully at war with Azushio then? Sighing and wishing for once the kid wasn't so sharp, I finally nodded his head. It was Jinchuriki should be on Azushio's doorstep soon. The prudent thing to do would be to introduce our own forces at the same time or close to it. There's more, but it's not for you to worry about for now. Attend to your duties. Karui and Omoi both saluted smartly. Yes sir. Turning away, Omoi led the way to the office door where the smartly dressed Mabui stood waiting. Behind them, I cleared his throat once. Karui. Seeing said girl turn back with a questioning look, I considered what he wanted to say before deciding it didn't matter. You're a good Kumo ninja. It's good to see you returned home. Best to give her the benefit of the doubt for now. Gratitude in her heart, Karui turned fully back to her cage and bowed deeply at the waist. Thank you sir. Rising to her full height again with a smile on her face, Karui turned to continue out into the hallway with Omoi. She'd show them. Kumo was her home, and no upstart Uzumaki clan head would touch it. Behind them and mind already forgetting about their failure of a mission, I leaned back in his chair as Mabui came towards him to address him with most likely more problems. Problems he didn't want to hear at the moment. I'm going. B and I will bloody the kid's nose a bit, take our property back, and then return. Iwa could continue with whatever they desired on their own. Mabui knew to be careful with what she wanted to say, but with war on the horizon, caution was not on her mind much. Is that why sir? Azushio handled our scouts with little difficulty as far as we can gather. Sending another wave of forces, her cage slammed a hand down on his desk, silencing her as he turned a frustrated face towards her. The difference here will be that myself and B will be together. Not even that brat Minato would have fared well against us. His own brat. No chance. Ever the optimist, A was set in his mind that taking down the Uzumaki brat was going to happen at his hands. Take one of his best squad leaders, would he? A had something special planned for him. Mabui wanted to remind her cage that not only had said Uzumaki brat literally waltz into this very office and done as he pleased, but had also stolen away every member of the Uzumaki breeding program short of Karui. The words never left her mouth this time. A was set and no words, not even hers, would be stopping him. As you wish, Lord Rakage. Instead she placed a folder on his desk and took 3 respectful steps backwards to maintain distance. A report from the science division. They've confirmed that Karui is viable. Humming and thumbing through the report lightly, or at least had some good news just in case they could not retrieve any of their other property. Good. Make sure she's put on standby for now. She won't be returning to Rizushio. Always have something in holding for the future. He may not like the Uzumaki brat, but his blood held so many benefits. Mabui bowed and took the dismissal for what it was. As you wish, Lord Rakage. And then she was gone, turning and strutting away to her duties. The first of which was assigning a watcher to Karui and Omoi. B. The next morning in Azushio's main city did in fact find Naruto facing reality in a way he wasn't entirely upset about, but surely wasn't as fun as cuddling in bed with all of his wives after a well and truly deserved party. Across from him Jiraiya grumbled with his arms crossed over his broad chest. Stop thinking about scantily clad fillies and focus, brat. You're projecting, old man, that's your brain not mine. Shit, could Jiraiya read fellow perverts' minds now? No, he couldn't. No way. Gaara sighed and turned back to Naruto after having noted Sasuke and Sakura off to the side while 2 Naruto clones filled out reports and signed acquisition forms. To finish off our little report. Killer Bee turned tail and fled after I joined the battle, but I wouldn't be surprised if he returns with more numbers. Naruto ultimately agrees with Gaara, knowing that the other Jinchuriki would have to answer to A, who would be quick to send him back on his quest to teach Azu a lesson. Sucks, but guess we'll need to prepare for him then. Hopefully A doesn't decide he needs to make an appearance himself. Fighting one or the other wouldn't be so bad. Fighting both together would take a little bit of work if he didn't just vaporize the landscape right away. Jiraiya shivered at the dark chuckle that left the energetic blonde's throat. That's unnatural coming from you. He had to roll his eyes at the finger he received from the cage. Love you too, brat. I could stay, offer my assistance and support when the time comes. Gaara was still getting used to having a full-time ally like this. It was nice, knowing that when someone said they would help you and your people, they would actually hold true to that. This was what friendship was. Naruto almost waved him off right away. Don't you have a village to worry about yourself? I'm sure they won't mind my time away when they hear the why. Seeing the truth of that, Naruto leaned back in his seat and decided to update the 2 on what had happened while he was away. I had to put the fear of God into Iwa. Which ultimately meant I had to kill Onoki and make Iwa a vassal state to us. Kuretsuki is the new Tsuchikage, not that she wanted it. She hates my guts, but Iwa's no longer a threat. For now at least. One crisis averted for now. He'd have to remember to return there and strike out a real deal between them. Maybe a path towards their independence one day. Maybe in 100 years. 200 if he was feeling vindictive. Jiraiya whistled low and grinned, proud of the kid for doing something not even the most ballsy of the cage would have considered. That takes some serious guts, kid. Better yet that Iwa wasn't a smoking crater. Naruto hadn't gone off the deep end yet, which gave the old sage hope. You don't know the half of it, pervy sage. Gaara felt something relax inside of him as well. One less thing to worry about. Maybe this means Suna can worry less about border skirmishes with Iwa and more about modernizing our home. Underground rail and more airship stations would be welcomed. His council had fallen in love with air travel on site and had been pestering him non-stop to make sure Suna had continued access to the airships. So quickly they forget how much they used to fear him. Azu is here to help you however we can, Gaara, don't forget that. You wouldn't let me if I tried. Seeing the 2 cage gearing up to take things a more official route, Jiraiya stood and stretched, his day nowhere close to done. Well, with that I should get up and get a move on. With the Kumo Jinchuriki sent packing for now, I'm headed east. That sent Naruto for a loop. Jiraiya of all people wasn't going to hang around and perv on women. In a city that was full of them. No way. What's out east? Jiraiya offered Naruto a grin, just some rumors involving Akatsuki. Nothing much. Naruto focuses on the older sage for a moment before shrugging and waving the older man off. You take it easy then. But you better not do anything rash. Soon it will kill you if you do something stupid and get hurt, and I'll be there to hold you down. Got it? Yeah brat, I hear ya. Jiraiya was already turning away and heading for the door. We have a road trip to plan soon as well, don't you forget it. I can't kick the bucket till then. Naruto grins and nods as Jiraiya opens the door to leave. Better believe it, old man, it'll be a trip to remember. Waving as the elder left, Naruto couldn't help but feel odd about the other man leaving. Guess he had forgiven the sage after all. There was silence for a few moments short of the light din of activity that reached them from the street below. Until Gaara cleared his throat and regained Naruto's attention. Have you heard from my siblings yet? Shaking his head, Naruto felt the hairs on the back of his neck tingle. No, can't say that I have. Why? Temari say something about me. The Kazekage had to fight not to roll his eyes. When doesn't she say something about? Gaara was cut off as the very air around them seemed to vibrate. He wasn't much surprised as Naruto was on his feet in a blink. Something to be worried over. Naruto's senses were going haywire, before focusing on a fairly familiar chakra signature. One that had been on Hinata not even a few days before. Oh yeah. Someone I owe a very personal beating. Wanna come watch? Seeing Gaara already coming to stand, Naruto didn't even have to look as Sasuke and Sakura formed up at his shoulders. Keying his radio, Naruto's voice held firm. Mr. 9 to control. Someone special is at our door, I'm going to answer it. Best to keep the normal forces away from this. Fights between Biju did tend to reshape the landscape after all, and Naruto was not planning on being nice for this. Han nearly killed a woman he loved and unknown to him at the time 2 of his unborn children. Naruto was going to teach him what an error that was. Han knew that it would have been a miracle for his group to make it all the way to Izu without tripping a patrol. But to be caught even before he made it to Wave and their bridge. That was a bit of a sore spot, but it would have to do. This should be close enough to get that Uzumaki brat's attention. Though their numbers had dwindled after running into an advance group from Suna, there should still be enough of his barrier team to complete the plan. Worst case, Han would be going all out today to make sure the QB fell. Dropping the bound and gagged bundle in his hands to the dirt, Han crossed massive arms over his chest as he and 24 of his troops stared down 2 Azushio patrols. They were an odd bunch, several wielding heavy-looking rifles of a design he had never seen before. But those eyes told him enough. Azu hated them, a feeling he returned with equal passion. Out of my way, small fry. I want your leader. I'll boil you alive if you think to step in my way. You won't set one foot on Azushio soil, Iwa scum. One of the patrol leaders called out, taking a cautious step forward though sweat built on his brow. Though he was worried about the Suna woman at the Iwa ninja's feet, he had a duty to his home. If he could help their allies somehow he would, but he sure didn't see a way. Laughing and motioning for his group to fan out, Han turned his full attention to the 6 people before him. I'm going to enjoy liquefying your corpses. Yeah, let's not. Calm and collected, Naruto's voice called out as he stepped from behind his people. Flanked by Sakura and Sasuke, who was pulling his bandages away from his eyes, Naruto stood tall before Han while Gaara came up quietly next to him. Both young men were still about a head shorter than the older man, but neither felt any fear of him. Someone ate their veggies. Chuckling darkly and nudging the bundle at his feet, Han held off on moving just for now. The vaunted Uzumaki finally shows himself. I thought you a coward after you sent your women the last time. Yeah, probably shouldn't bring that up. I'm still thinking about ripping your spine out of your throat. Naruto cracked his knuckles as a grin began to build on his face. I promise, this'll hurt. With a thought, Han kicked the bound and gagged woman up and caught her by the neck. Not so fast, boy. Unless you want something to happen to this little desert flower. Face now in full view, Naruto and Gaara were met with Temari's gagged and bleeding face. Half of her ponytails had come loose, and she surely looked like she had gone a few rounds with the bruiser. Do what I say, and maybe you'll let this one go. Rearing back and smashing her heel into Han's shin, Temari shook her head until the gag came loose. Kill this Sanuva bitch Naruto. Don't let him. A fist drove its way into her midsection, eliciting a coughing fit that silenced her. Gar, little bitch. Are all Suna women like this? How do you put up with it? Han grunted and turned his attention back to the group in front of him. Women should know their place, lest they end up steamed alive like the rest. With a twitch, Temari was in Naruto's arms, an emergency placed-ration seal doing its job and saving her from further mistreatment. Yeah, we don't raise cowards here. Real men love a woman with some fire. Gently setting her down on her feet and handing her over to Gaara, Naruto focused fully on the threat ahead of him. Like I said, this is going to hurt. I promise. Oh, I've been looking forward to this fight, little boy. As the two began to leak chakra and face off, Temari began to shake in Gaara's arms. Gaara, he. Kankuro and the others, they, there. Without looking over his shoulder, Naruto hooked a thumb into the woods around them. Gaara, take my patrol teams and head north. Feels like your people are that way. Gaara twitched but stared at Naruto's back all the same, and leave you. No, he would not leave his fellow Kage and friend to fight an experienced Jinchuriki all alone. Naruto nodded, yes, go take care of your people. Naruto turned back and gave Gaara a grin that would have mirrored one of his own so many years ago. Me and Sasuke are more than enough for this asshole. Rotating an arm and walking forward, Sasuke sighed and stretched a bit. Guess I get to play around too this time. Gonna complain? Nope, just making sure. Gaara took in the sure way in which Naruto held himself, before sighing and nodding. As you wish. He turned to one of the teams and pointed to them. Take my sister to Azushio, make sure she reaches the hospital. Naruto ignored everything else going on behind him as he and Sasuke closed within 2 meters of Han, who hadn't moved from his spot. And while murder was on his mind, he was reminded that he needed to play it smart. Yes, because offing him and releasing the Gobi would be a very bad idea. Or big buddy, don't wanna fight a Biju head on. This close to wave. Point. Naruto shook himself as golden light sprung from his body. Next to him he could feel Sasuke's own purplish chakra rising as well. You ready for this? Always, brother. Sakura shook her head and pulled her gloves on tightly. Oh yes, just leave the cannon fodder to me. No big deal. Let the hack magical ninja have all the fun. Sakura rolled her eyes and turned to where she could feel the rest of the Iwa ninja spreading out in an attempt to build a barrier. This'll be quick. She made note of Gaara and the others leaving, what looked like a tired and passed out Temari over the shoulders of one of the teams. Han couldn't wait anymore, racing forward with steam boiling out from his outstretched fist. You're taking this too lightly. I'm a fully realized Jinchuriki, you brat. You're no match for me. His fist came crashing down, only to be stopped by a palm that lightly struggled against his strength. What? Naruto held him back, a bloodthirsty smirk on his face. Oh, would you look at that? Naruto pushed Han back before jumping away from a wave of superheated steam. Everyone is so hung up on the fully realized Jinchuriki thing. Like I didn't learn a few tricks of my own. Steam gave way to white fire from Sasuke, and Naruto eyed up the nearly vibrating Han. By the way, Kurotsuki knows I'm going to kill you, so you might as well forget ever seeing your village again. Diving under a grand fireball, Han thrust a fist into the ground. Around him a wall of heated steam and water erupted, giving him some breathing room. What do I care about that whelp? Honored granddaughter has her own duties. I answer to Lord Tsuchikage's will. Naruto chuckled, bursting through the wall of water with ease while Sasuke circled around. Oh, didn't I mention? Kubakiriboko made its appearance, singing for blood, and who was Naruto to deny it? Onoki is dead, and you're going to join him. B. Kisame had to admit to at least one guilty pleasure of his, one that didn't involve violence and death or women. Something he didn't have much time for these days, especially during his time with Akatsuki. The sea. His physical features weren't just for show. He and the rest of his kin felt much more at home within the sea and its waters than up on land. And here now in the waters surrounding Azushio, where life was burgeoning all around him. It was almost freeing. Sword in hand, there was nothing but him, his trusted weapon, and sea life. Sure, even the sharks gave him a wide berth, predators recognizing a true apex monster among them. Even so, it was a view he didn't have to share with anyone else. Something only someone like him could experience. Well, at least that used to be the case. Because some whelp of a woman in a blue swimsuit was pacing him through the waters. With those scales, her hands and feet were webbed too. And what was that behind her in the darkness of the deeper waters? A grin began to stretch across his face as his danger sense started to tingle. All signs pointed to a fight, and a good one at that. Deciding she must be some type of scout, Kissam rocketed up and out of the water. The spray that accompanied him was still falling all around him as he and his pursuer landed on the water's surface and stuck there with Chakra. Same hadder on his shoulder, Kissam leveled a grin towards her. So, guess Azu knows I'm coming then. Across from him Isaribi frowned and keyed her mic. Attention all units. Queen Undertow is engaging Akatsuki member Hoshigaki Kissam. Advised to stay away. Grin widening and becoming more bloodthirsty, Kissam lowered himself a bit and readied for a charge. Oh. Guess you wanna try me all on your own. Think you got the skills for that. Fear gripped her for a moment. Isaribi had never met Kissam before, but she had read the reports and had learned more than enough. Facing off against the man labeled a human biju was not high on her list of things to do in her life. Nor was it something she would have chosen to do normally. But this close to Azushio, the main island well within view, she had no choice. It was time to pay back her dues. Oh, I think I've got something for you, big guy. Chuckling, Kissam had a feeling this slip of a girl was terrified of him. Oh well. If she wanted to get in his way, so be it. Fine then, show me what you've got, little lady. Behind her the three-headed dragon golem built and perfected by Lady Karen and Lady Honoka breached the water's surface to stare down at the shark-featured man. Meet my furfur. And no, you shall not pass here. Isaribi would not let him get by her. Not so long as she breathed. Kissam's eyes went wide as a monster from myth stared down at him while chakra built up in its throat. Maybe this would be a good warm-up before he made it to the Uzumaki brat after all. Good. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.